What does it mean to master the game of life? Like any game, it requires a fundamental understanding and application of the rules. But living in today's on-demand society is making this nearly impossible, as our attention is increasingly being fought over and monetized by others. Will Moore's mission is to help you hit the reset button by providing a new set of game rules based on time-proven universal principles and modern science. To gamify your life by making it fun and addictive to replace your habits in the 5 core areas of your life proven to lead to true happiness. Ready, player one?
Hello there. Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry. Oh man. Tech boy in the house. Always something. I had messaged my guest today from my Gamify Your Parenting account. If you didn't know, check it out if you're a parent. It's all this and more so with kids. Fun stuff. But I didn't realize I messaged her from that account, and I was on here and she was on there waiting to go live. So we just communicated. So we'll get her on hopefully in the next couple of minutes here. Super excited actually about this guest. Her name is Katie Patrick, and she is somebody that I actually found in the gamification world. There's not a ton of us in terms of the gamification as it relates to your habits and your happiness and all that fun stuff and your wellness. There's a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, but the majority of gamification is companies like Facebook and Google using it to monetize our attention and crush our lives. No, I don't really hold them totally responsible. It is what it is. System that we live in. It's capitalism, and shareholders dictate what you do, and wellness is not on that spreadsheet. So it's always cool to see people that are trying to use this type of stuff for good versus evil, for lack of a better term. It's been a couple weeks since we've had one of these. How's everybody doing? What's the momentum vibe these days? Are we building it? Are we losing it? What are the habits you're working on? Give me a little something. Give me something. Just give me a little treat to snack on while I'm waiting for you guys to sort of chime in. I'll tell you that I personally have been making some strides with one particular habit, and that's this one. Do you guys see this posture? Nope, it's this. Okay, so sitting at my desk all day, like I'm sure a lot of you do, it's very easy to get the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and over time, as we know, those habits compound, and you become more and more of the wicked step witch from, what's that one where she bit into the apple? Remember that like witch with the big nose and the Sleeping Beauty? So we don't want that. So I've been using this little habit hack. I'd used it in the past and I thought I beat the habit, but then she came back because I got a little complacent, and it's called Upright Go. And it's like got a sticky thing and you attach it to the back of your spine and it vibrates, and it's very simple. It's, using all this stuff we talk about, it's a very obvious cue that, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to proactively be like, I need to do this habit. It does it for you. So as soon as I start to go forward, it doesn't shock me. That sounded like I was getting electrocuted. But it gives me like a little buzz that reminds me, sit up. And it's like just becomes automatic. And then so I automatically start doing it. And so I've been using it. They got a new 2.0 version. I love it. I've tried other things. Like I've tried those ones like without the electronics where it's like a brace type thing and it's supposed to like keep you from leaning forward. The man's ear, but for your head. None of those seem to work. So this is what I'm doing, and it's working. So I lost this is what happens in the world, people, okay? Because let's just talk about reality and what's going on right now. Anybody raise your hand if you've had a really hard time trying to keep people, employees, good people. It's always been hard, but it's harder than ever now. I feel like the workplace is extremely competitive. It's hard to find and keep good people. I had some great people that were working for me, helping me set these up. They would pre-email the guests, give them all the information they needed. That just all went away because people move up in life when they're good. And I'm in the middle of hiring some new people. And in the meantime, there she is.
Hi.
Hello there.
I struggle joining. I've never joined an Instagram Live before.
No, you're totally cool. I was just telling the audience, I had a great assistant, and I just realized that I thought it was automated, but that she was manually, when I would get a guest, she would send the pre-emails and say, this is what you need to do. And it just now hit me that, because she's now moved on to bigger and better things, because that's what good people do. You lose them, they go. So I've been left to just do it myself, and clearly I dropped the ball big time. I emailed you, I messaged you from the wrong account, and then I didn't give you instructions on how to get in. So
okay.
My fault, not yours.
Thanks.
Welcome,
no worries. Now we know how to do it. If you're inviting somebody, don't assume that they've ever jumped on a live before. And if I do a live again, now I know how to join it. I see people doing them all the time.
Now you know, right?
I just never joined one or did one myself.
Yeah, I know. I get the idea because it's a twofer. So we're live and we get, people engaging now and can see it, and then it posts to the page, and then we also download it, and then we put it on our podcast and YouTube and repurpose it and take clips out and all those fun things. So let's get into it. I'm super excited to have you on. So I found you. This doesn't normally happen. Normally I have a team that helps me find awesome guests. And I was actually tooting your horn earlier. I'll toot it again briefly, because I don't find a lot of people in the gamification space, in the wellness gamification space. Most of it is, big companies like Facebook and Google monetizing our attention and crushing our souls. Half kidding. But they have a fiduciary responsibility to do what they have to do to please their shareholders.
Sorry about it.
Sorry guys, but and so I get excited when I see people using gamification for, lack of a better term, good versus evil. And that's what I'm seeing here with you. I discovered your course and I took it. And was it on, God, it's been a while now. Was that on
you might have found it on
which
Udemy.
platform was
I have
the
one
course
on there.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. And I was very impressed with how you were using these same concepts that I take and to trying to do some good to the world. So why don't we just get into your story, your background, give us a brief, give us the 3-minute version of how you got to this point, and then what got you into gamification.
Awesome.
And we can start
and thank you for finding me. So I'm primarily a sustainability person. I'm an environmental engineer. I started off as a extreme environmental activist, listening to the dead Kennedys and Tool and all those like grunge metal. I don't know how we could kind of getting into this. I think I was listening to Faith No More yesterday, so I'm like more attuned to my 90s past. So I kind of started off as a pretty serious environmentalist.
Nice.
And but then did the proper environmental engineering degree, and then worked as a green building engineer and consultant on commercial buildings, helping them be more green. But the thing is that working on commercial buildings, which are usually office buildings, to me at the time in my early 20s was painfully boring. The idea of like adding up the kilowatts of lights, and then I just couldn't stand it because I had so much creative energy. I was kind of half artist, half engineer. So I started a media company, really telling stories and trying to convey environmental sustainability in this fun, fabulous way that it was to me, that it wasn't boring and sort of stuck in the mud and these sort of drippy scientists and people eating lentils and stuff. I had this really fabulous visual identity in my mind for what it was to be interested in the environment, into sustainability. And then media then naturally started going in the way of the internet. Everybody was developing apps. That's when Facebook and Twitter came out. We're talking like over 10 years ago, when all this social media stuff and, the app didn't exist before then, and suddenly it existed. So any of us who were interested in storytelling or communication naturally went towards the digital media model. So then we're making all this content. We're looking at how do we develop apps. And then naturally it seemed, well, how do we get these apps to actually do something? If we're going to make a video or a podcast or a documentary or a digital anything, how do we get this to get the person to actually do the action in the real world, to put on the solar panel, to take the shorter shower, to purchase the EV? And then that really opened up behavioral science for me. I discovered that behavior change was a thing. Like I'd never heard of it before. And I was like, oh, behavior change, that's a science. And that there were books on behavior change, and there were behavior change apps and habit apps, and habits were like kind of a field, like it was actually a field of study that you could learn. And I was just obsessed. Like I just read every single behavioral science, habit design, human-centered design, like all of it. I just went really, really deep dive. And I really became obsessed with the center of it, which is the feedback loop, like actually measuring the data. So that's why I call it Fitbit. I call what I do Fitbit for the planet design. Like, if we have a Fitbit tracker, it senses us. It senses us in real time. So when we look at our environmental footprint, how do we do that in real time? And that's really where I sort of center my expertise on, is the measurement of environmental impact. And then, well, how do we then design that into like a tool or an interface or a dashboard that's really going to make people take action. And that was just such a big, like, lightning bolt, like, life-changing, like, wow factor for me. Like, oh my God, we can measure the planet, and then we can show it in, like, a Fitbit in real time and make amazing apps that will, like, be fun and give people smiley faces and love hearts when they do the green thing. And this was just so fabulous compared to just making content. And before then, just doing energy efficiency audits on office buildings. Like, oh my God, kill me now if I had to do that my whole life.
Right.
And that's basically what I've done for the last 10 years. There's a book, podcast. I've developed a number of apps. I make content. I study it. I interview experts in the academic field about it. And now my whole world is just about how trying to design these systems to get people to take environmental action, of which gamification is part of, but it's not the whole. It's not all of it, but I would say it's, maybe half gamification and half is the rest of the psychology about, how to get people to do things for the planet.
It's funny. So I've been using all this, right. Our brains are very in sync in terms of the way we look at it all. And, you're focused more on the environmental side, whereas I'm more like, that's part of it, but it's these 5 main areas we all have that we all need to make sure that we're continually growing and balancing: your mindset, your relationships, your physical health, your emotional health, and your career and your finances. And, within the emotional health part of that is like a giving back aspect and making sure, the world is better for you, having you in it versus being like, F you for being here. So you're focused more on that side. But I just recently got into like really distinguish the difference between gamification and behavioral science. And I love that you use them not mutually exclusively, because they kind of are the same thing, but at the same time they're not. And correct me if you disagree with this. From what I've kind of come to learn, because I've read all the same books and stuff as well. And at first, the way I would look at it is, well, behavioral science is basically using what we know about the brain and what motivates us to take action, to sort of make it obvious, make it easy, James Clear type stuff, rewarding, satisfying, so that it's like, you can't not do it, right? To kind of trick your brain into taking action and doing these things and making it so you want to do it. And then gamification falls under that, but it's more getting into like more specific points, rewards, competition, social connectivity, right? Like actually kind of making it more game-like. And so now when I talk about the two, I say kind of similar to what you do, which is I use behavioral science and these types of methods. And I also use gamification as part of it. What's your take?
Yeah, it's great to sort of drill down and get into these definitions. So behavioral science is all of the science of how humans do stuff. Like, for example, if you've got one person in a room and one person is doing a particular behavior, a lot of people are, like, say for an environmental example, if people are littering, right, then, and you see litter all over the ground, you will then litter as well, because you see the litter everywhere. You're like, what's the point of putting it in the trash can when there's litter everywhere? You basically will just mimic what is going on. That's called a social norm in behavioral science, that we just copy the people around us. Now, you wouldn't call that gamification. That's just a behavioral response that people have. And there's many, many things that we do like that are
right.
Behavioral. So the way I see the definition of gamification, perhaps it's such a new kind of field, maybe it hasn't really been defined yet. I see it as something that's like very simple and very structural. It means you're coming up with where you are right now. Where is the beginning and where is the end? And how are we tracking progress between the beginning and the end? And you can use this for, environment, like my own carbon emissions or my company's carbon emissions. You can use it for your finance, for your kids. I think you wanted an example. I've got my own personal example here that I will show later when you ask. For my personal life, you can basically use this for anything, because this is the dopamine, the way our goal-seeking dopamine system works. Human psychology, the human nervous system, brain entity that we have, we figure out where we are now, we decide where we want to go, and this can be absolutely physical, like we're walking 100 meters, like we're doing it in physical space, but we can also do it with big challenges like trying to buy a house or trying to finish a PhD or something like that. But we measure where we want to go in the goal, and then we have a system in our mind that tracks our progress towards that goal, and then we kind of evaluate our energy as we're going towards that goal, because we have to often push pretty hard. It's very hard to be motivated when you don't know where the end line is, right? You don't know where the goal is. If I said go for a run and you don't know how long that run is, like how do you kind of stagger yourself or measure your own motivation and your own energy to get to the goal, when it could be a 5-hour run, it could be a 20-minute run, right? So that goal is very important for us to narrow in and figure out where we're going. So the gamification design is you come up with this beginning and end, you track the progress in between, and then you use rewards as people make progress. When you're 20% through, you get a reward. 50% through, you get a reward, like a badge or a love heart or a smiley face or a check mark or whatever it is. And then you can break up that progress into segments as well, which is basically like levels. Maybe you've got 7 levels in your progress bar. You're at level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. As you get expertise, and then you can add in color, you can add in any kind of story, you can add creatures, but it's primarily just a beginning and an end, committing to a goal and tracking that progress and then rewarding the progress and possibly like breaking it up into segments. And for me, that is all gamification is. That's the only thing in this. And you can go super simple, or you can go like really elaborate and really complex. And I think if you just apply that basic framework to just about anything, you can then really harness that motivational core in people to basically follow their own progress to achieve the goal. And then they have their own natural dopamine reward system that is already existing there. And we're just kind of like perhaps like exaggerating or enhancing or augmenting the existing reward system that we have.
I love all that. So, right, to your average person, I think a lot of that is going to go over their head, because you and I are two people that have read, like I said, I'm sure a lot of the same books, and we see things similarly. And I think you did a great job of simplifying it and breaking it down. So let's get into like an example. I think this is one to really drive this home to people, to show them how they can use gamification to move the needle and actually.
Yeah, well, let's say if I'm looking at, for example, the amount of waste that I produce, how much trash I take out every day, right? So we might, first step is to measure where we are now. Do you have any idea? Can you estimate like how much trash you produce in a week? So if it's like a bag, let's say a shopping bag, let's say this unit of measurement is just like a regular shopping bag. How many a week?
I mean, I don't even want to say publicly. I've got 3 small children. I've got a baby that's 9 months old. I mean, the amount of garbage that comes out of the house is just shameful. So a lot. But no, you're right. I mean,
but you don't
should probably have a better idea of the measurement. But there's some shame in it, and I think I try.
Oh well, maybe have you tried using the washable diapers? They're pretty high tech now. The ones with all the clips and the inserts.
You know what? I'm going to get you online with my wife, and if we can convince her, I'm in. And I am going to research it. I didn't even know that was a thing, to be honest with you. I'm going to research it, and I'm going to send her the link. She's great. At the same time, we have hardly enough time in the day, so I can see her initial reaction is going to be like, no way. So we got to gamify it. We got to get her to do it to where she wants to, because it's fun. Yeah. There's some reward. There's a goal.
That's the interesting mechanism between you haven't asked this question, but I'll just go in anyway. The relationship between the intrinsic motivation and the extrinsic motivation. That if she's got the intrinsic motivation, like she really believes that it's a good cause, but it's a little bit functionally hard to do. I mean, that's the best situation, because it can be hard to gamify something that people really don't want to do. It'll still work. The stuff still works, but you kind of want it to work on like a hot lead, so that's where you might need some education and some emotional gravity, like show some data about like all the emissions from all the diapers in the world, that they go to the moon and back a few times, and they have that emotional moment where they're like, I really care about
their
this.
Emotion. And
then the gamification just sort of supports that behavior in the real world. But anyway, back to our
Sorry, let me pause there real quick, because that's such an important piece of gamification to me that I don't hear talked about that often. Certain people do. I know Jane McGonigal in her Super Better talks about, but like, and also UK Chow emotion. But emotions with gamification are just, it's such a huge piece. And what you just said is key, in that you have to first connect. You got to first get the person emotionally, right? You got to connect with them in some way. And people like to play games, right? And like, you think of your favorite game when you were a kid, and you can immediately be like, oh my God, Foursquare. And all these like emotions and memories rush back. And that's kind of the same thing that I think gamification is trying to accomplish, is to connect with somebody in a way that like elicits an emotion, so it already increases the momentum and sort of reduces the friction to want to take action, right? And then, like you said, then you piggyback that with specific gamification.
Yeah, I see the way that I present when I'm ever giving like a presentation or a guest lecture, the way I present my kind of work is that, and this is specific to environment, but it also, the stuff kind of works for all the other areas as well, is that we tend to assume that if we just educate people about climate change and about the whales and about recycling, then people will care. And then when people care, then they'll act. And behavioral science over and over again proves that this is wrong. Because the thing is that most people care about the planet, right? They care. I bet you care, despite your do you have 3 children and a baby, or 4 altogether? 3, 1 of which is a baby.
I mean, I don't know. There might be 4. Who knows? I'm just trying to survive. No, there's 3 boys. 3 boys, yeah. By the way. That's like having 6
But is one of them a baby,
girls.
Or is there...
FYI.
Okay, so there are only three humans.
9 months.
Okay, so there could be a zygote in there, but it's not making trash yet. So, okay. Presenting the knowledge and the caring, right? I'm saying that despite all of your trash, which you're not quite sure how much it is, I would assume that you care about the planet, right?
Oh, yeah.
Everyone, and the thing is that most people do. Most people do care, right? And so the problem is not really in the caring or the education. Like if everybody just knew how bad climate change was, we'd do something about it. People know they have to eat their vegetables. They know they need to save for the future. They know they need to go to the gym. They know they need to quit smoking. We know we need to do all this environmental stuff. But then the actual behaviors and the actions are hard to do. And people ask me also a lot about, like, why do you want to change individual behavior when you want to change the system? Even if you are trying to change the system, it still requires behavior. You still need to write letters, we still need to gamify letter writing, turning up to council meetings, changing laws. Like you can gamify all of that system stuff as well. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
Right. So how do we get them? How do we gamify this going from, I'm a perfect example, by the way, of this. So I mean, I got all these things going on. I got my 5 cores. I'm focusing on my physical health, my relationship. And environmentally, I check that box and go, oh yeah, I'm a good guy. I recycle. I just ordered an electric car, right? But I know in the back of my mind that there's so many more things that I could be doing. And like I said, like even just with the garbage example, I like cringe at the thought of how much we're producing, things like, a reusable diaper isn't even on my radar. So how do you go from somebody like me that's, yes, I care and I want to do more, to connecting the dots using gamification?
Yeah. So the mistake that gets made a lot in my industry is people will think that we just need to educate you more. So if we go all and watch a big long documentary about diapers and trash, and we, really pull on your heartstrings, then that will just magically create the action. But that probably won't work. You'll probably come out caring even more, and then you'll probably still not do anything, right? Because the gamification targets the action, whereas the education targets that inner feeling of I really care and I want to do something. And the mistake is that education will do all the work for us. It doesn't. It just gets you primed. It primes your intrinsic motivation for the gamification to work. So it's kind of like the base coat. It's like the nutrients in the soil, but then you still need to water it, and get it to grow. So the way I approach this to get to the how I gamify is, first thing is we measure how much. So I would ask you to start to measure how many bags of trash you have put out for a week, because primarily we just have to measure our impact. That is that's the backbone, the skeleton. So measure it for a week. Don't try to change anything, and then write it on the wall so you can see it. So putting something on the wall is called ambient messaging. It can be digital, or it can just be with a Sharpie. Put that on the wall. And then you need to decide on your goal. And the way I teach this in my book is called the God metric. The God metric, we're going to do it in pounds. It's going to be pounds of trash, or maybe it could be bags, whatever unit you decide to do it in. Actually, probably bags. I don't know if you want to measure it. Bags is easier. And then where you want to get to. Do you want to get to 0? Like, do you want to go really advanced, or do you want to just maybe cut down by 50% what you think is reasonable? 0 is pretty hard to do, but people do it. And then you put that on the wall as this is your beginning, and this is your end. And primarily you've got that metric, and then you need to break down and start looking at the behaviors of what do we actually have to do? What is our action that we have to do to get ourselves to this ultimate goal? And then keep measuring it every single day. So every day you then imagine it's basically like a progress bar from beginning to end. You get a piece of paper and you write how many bags of trash you put out that day, and then you track them, and then you're tracking them. And honestly, the tracking in itself will do 50% of the work for you. You don't need to do anything else, but just measure it and track it And that in itself the magic will start to begin there. And so once you've got that tracking, then you can start to figure out, how might you reward these behaviors, right? Now, there's a lot you need to do to sort of cut down on trash. So I won't get into like what exactly these behaviors are, like, diapers and reusable water bottles and plastic and stuff like that, because there's a lot in that. But then, every day that you do not put out any trash, or perhaps you go through a day where actually maybe the trash is not the best thing to gamify with that particular metric. Maybe what you want to gamify is not purchasing anything that will end up in the trash, because that's the real action that you want to address. Like, did you go to the store and did you buy the disposable diapers? Did you buy plastic water bottles that are going to go in the trash? Did you buy stuff? So can you go every 24 hours you go without purchasing anything that is going to end up in the trash? That's what you really want to gamify. So every time you do that, you give yourself some big reward. Maybe it's like a love heart or an earth sticker or like a smiling earth or something like that. And then every time you do buy something that's going to end up in the trash, then you give yourself like the not good sticker, like the stick. And then you are monitoring this, rewarding yourself when you do the successful action, which is to not buy anything, giving yourself, a little bit of a negative reward when you, anti-reward, when you do buy something. And then you're also tracking this, like that in itself will just doing that will naturally create all of this progress. And something else that I think is just super critical with this stuff that I wouldn't really define as gamification, but is really, really works for people, is doing it in a group. If you're doing it alone and nobody's watching you and you're not part of a community, it's going to be really easy to fall off the wagon. So what would really make this work for you? If we found another 10 Wills, do you have friends like you that have 3 kids that are dads that are also into this stuff? Okay, we'll get your friends together. This is going to work. We need to get all of you together, right? And we need all of you doing it every single day at the same time, putting up your, we did it sticker. Every time you go, I went for another 24 hours without purchasing any plastic or any diapers. And then you're sharing it together. You're meeting for group Zoom calls once a week to talk about your challenge, and then making the challenge perhaps time-based as well. If it's infinite, for the rest of your life, it can be hard to commit to. But if you say, we're going to do it for 30 days, we're going to do it for 7 days, you'll be able to keep people's attention for a specific bit of time, because we're much more able to commit to goals when they have exact timeframes, preferably shorter timeframes. And it's that accountability with the group, and also the social norming, like what I said before with the example of social norms, people copying each other. You'll all be copying each other. So you'll all be kind of reinforcing each other's behavior as you go. And nobody wants to be the loser in the group that kind of lets the group down or does a worse job than everybody. You'll all kind of encourage this upward spiral together. So I really think that group psychology with this stuff, that's perhaps not, it doesn't even need to be in the gamification design. You don't need to have a leaderboard of you all together. You just need to be human to human, communicating with the same goal in mind, which is to get to zero waste. And I've got a podcast where I interview academic social scientists on this, and every single one of them, the end result of every conversation with a published academic author is change spreads through conversation. It's all conversation. And I'm not cherry picking for conversation at all. I do cherry pick a little bit for things that I think are actionable in the academic evidence, that I think it could be usable, but I'm absolutely not cherry picking for this thing about change threads through human to human conversation. But yet it is the thing that falls out at the end of every single published paper. So I think if you're not getting groups of people together.
So that's the most, you would say the most common, I was just going to say, sorry to interrupt you, the most common thread that you're seeing that seems to work with this gamification is essentially that social element, that communal.
Well, I'm saying if
element.
you really want to get people to change their behavior, they're kind of changing their culture as well, inside themselves, what is culturally normal for them, then having people in groups, because gamification in the real world is all about change, right? You're trying to change yourself, or you're trying to change something in the world. And we fundamentally, we change by adopting or copying the behaviors of other people, by norming to our group. So if you create a group, or if you create a tribe where that new behavior is the normal way, it's the aspired way, then by being part of that group, all the group members will diffuse those behaviors into each other through those conversations. And that's also how you would spread it to other people. So without the group, you may have some success, but I really think when you can master, when somebody masters getting groups together and adding that gamification structure to the group, I mean, that's where I think you'll really hit the powerhouse of this stuff working.
It's funny you say that. That's, yeah, with what I'm doing and my system, that's a huge piece. And I've been trying to figure out the best way to integrate it, because there's an app that people can use, which is gamifying it, literally like making it fun. And there's points in your rocket ship and you have these 5 cores, and in order to break Earth's gravitational pull, you have to very slowly but surely start replacing your bad habits with good habits in each of these core areas, so it's not overwhelming. And you start then you get to your first planet, and then you're fighting through asteroid fields, you're meeting aliens, you're going to different solar systems. And part of it, there's a competition element where you can see other people's spaceships, how much they've upgraded, what their armor is, their wings, their rockets. And so you're kind of like, oh, I want my rocket ship to be this, because that means that I've loved, when you're leveling up on screen, you're also leveling up in real life is the idea. But then there's also where this communal aspect, which I think is so important. And I'm just trying to figure out the best place for it to live. Ideally, it would be in the app, but I don't think that's practical, because it's its own beast. And so, right, it's kind of figuring out, like, how do you bring everybody together that's, okay, hey, we're all working on changing our habits. Hey, you over here, you 5 people, you're working on the exact same habit that I'm working on, and you seem like a similar vibe to me and how you're going about it. So let's all, like, push each other and hold each other accountable and, form this group. And, like, that stuff is so important. But like you said, I think it's the devil's in the details, and it's very tricky to put that into a format that people will start doing and stick to. Because as we know, I mean, just like any habit, that's a habit in itself, right? Joining a new social, and the last thing I think people want to do is join another social platform, right? Because it's like, there's already too many. So you got to kind of figure out, okay, how do we gamify that? How do we sort of trick their little brains into sort of doing it, and then they're all of a sudden they're in, and then they're hooked, and then they're like, okay, this is what I do. But
I don't think it's hard in the way that you just explained it, because the way that you explained it is a big, heavy, complex system like an app or a platform. And I think primarily the way people are going to enter this desire for change is via a social network. So let me explain, like, a really easy way to do it. Grab a bunch of friends and set up a WhatsApp group. Okay. How easy is that? Hey everyone, would you like to take on a new challenge for 7 days or 30 days? Or let's have a group Zoom call on, like, Thursday at 3 p.m. to just, like, talk about this. Okay, anyone can set up a WhatsApp group. Okay, an email list, like a Google group. You can go onto Google and you can create a little email list. And we're not talking about building, like, a following of like 10 or 20,000 people. I'm just saying, get 10 or 20 people together that that might be into it. Set up a Slack channel, set up a Discord. Like, it does not need to be high tech at all. It doesn't need to be a lot of people. Some people that do this in the community space say that the optimal group level number is 7 people. Not academic research. This is on the ground. They say as soon as you get up to 10 or 12 people, they say it's too much. People start to drop off and they feel lost. When you get under 5, people don't quite get the traction. So how hard is it to get 7 people on a WhatsApp group and start communicating to each other, and do it on a piece of paper? You can have the app as well with, like, the planets and the cool stuff and all that stuff, but the actual community part of staying in contact with people, you're just doing it through text messages with a group of people sharing each other, and a Slack channel. I mean, anybody can do that.
I 1000% agree. But here's where I want to challenge you, and this is why it's not happening. And this is, let's talk about how this is going to be solved. Two smart people. So going from what you said does not sound like a huge, big, hard thing to do, right? You said all you got to do is grab 7 of your friends, set up a WhatsApp, How many people do you think, let's say 10 million people were listening to this podcast. There's not 10 million, but let's say there were. How many people of the 10 million that you suggested that to would actually do that, form the habit, and consistently follow through without any other prompt other than us talking about it on the show? Right? And so to me, that's the big one. That's like, I talk to so many people like yourself that are so smart and have these great ideas, And what I'm trying to do, and I know you're trying to do the same, is bridge that gap between wanting and knowing that I should do something and then actually doing it. And that's the problem. And that's why you're doing what you're doing and why the environmental is in so much trouble. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, why people have such bad habits, because we're relying on willpower. And we're going, oh yeah, that's a good idea, right? Until 5 seconds later, when you scroll through social media and there's a dancing monkey and you've completely forgotten about that awesome thing that you're supposed to do, right? And so to me, that's the rub. And that's the bazillion dollar, like, how do you solve, like, and then change, forget money, just changing the planet, changing people's happiness. How do you go from I want and I should to actually doing it? And I'm desperately doing everything I can to figure that out and to, and I know there's a lot of these things like James Clear, like we were saying earlier, in terms of just making it so ridiculously simple and small and obvious and easy. And, and so to me, there is a bit of hand holding that we need to do with these people, because what you just said is a great idea, but nobody's going to do it. Right. So how do you actually go, hey, let me just reduce the friction for you a little bit and let me hand it to you on a silver platter. And that's some of the things I'm trying to do. Let me ask you, how would you take what you just said and help people reduce the friction to actually
it's this point that we're getting to is a really critically important point that I think is really kind of the new kind of opening of where it's at for all this type of design. Because everybody who's trying to design like apps and games and stuff, like they really get their design thinking mind is tunnel visioned on the product and on the individual, right? Well, we want to get a person and the person's going to do all this stuff and they're going to have this really cool experience and we're going to make the checklist like this and the reward do this and that. But then you get to the bit of like, well, how are we going to make it like a group all working together, and how are we going to get people to then talk about it, and how are we going to get it to grow? So what we need to do is shift our design thinking lens to exactly the problem that you just said nobody's going to do that. Not nobody, we have to design for it. How do we design, not be so focused on the app experience for the individual, but get more focused on how do we gamify or design for a person to get 7 of their friends together. Let's say it's that simple. That's the parameter. You need to get 7 friends together in a WhatsApp group and communicate regularly for a period of 30 days. App or no app. Maybe you've got the best game app experience in the world, or you have none, but you're going to get together. If that is our design mission, how do we get people to do that? And it's true, there's a lot of emotional friction to getting people together and to go out, especially if you need to be talking to strangers. Like if these 7 people aren't your friends, you're going to go out and talk to people that you don't know very well and create a group. There's a genuine amount of hesitation and friction in that. But actually designing for that interpersonal friction to actually go out and get people that you know into a group, that's the thing that we need to be gamifying and designing for, rather than designing for the individual. And the last podcast I did was exactly on this. And I did I did a little video on it, actually. And it was hugely popular. It got like 10,000 views on Instagram and loads of people were sharing it. It was like the most popular video I've ever done. And the academic word for it is called the self-efficacy of social diffusion. So self-efficacy is feeling that you have just confidence that your actions are going to make a difference. And so you want to boost people's self-efficacy of the social diffusion, which is going around and talking to people, which is a totally different way to think than just focusing on the individual's like self-efficacy or just focusing on the social diffusion, right? So, I mean, what we got out of this conversation with this academic who studies this is basically just like the same gamification framework, like you're signing people up to like a vision or a goal. We assume people already care. People already care about this stuff, but we want to basically recruit people into this vision. Would you like to see this vision of all your friends doing this, or your family doing this, or this great environmental vision, whatever it is, a zero waste future, a carbon neutral, whatever. But we need to sort of get some action going, in our community. Would you like to join this group? And you're right, people do not want to join another platform, but what people do want is deep emotional connection. Apparently everybody's lonely or struggling from this sense of depersonalization and lack of connection. People love to be a part of really close interpersonal groups where they can increase their level of friendship. So there's a real genuine draw for people that they get to be a part of some more deeply personal connection. That's not another platform. We're not talking about another platform. That we can pull people into this, and then we're asking people to commit. It's the same thing. You know, do you have a goal? Could you go out and then talk to another 10 people to recruit them into this? So everybody signs up to set up their groups. We make a commitment. Okay, I've got 10 people in my phone that I can possibly call. Okay, so you've got your checklist. Okay, 10 people. You get your love heart sticker for every single person that you call. We're all comparing each other. Have we made it through our 10 people? One person's like, oh, I only got through 5. Okay, I got 10. One person's like, I got excited and I went over and I did 20. And then they've all got their commitments, and then they share it. Then there's creating a script for people, because these conversations can be awkward. You can script it out like you do for salespeople. You know, salespeople read scripts, like script it out, coming up with hook ideas, like creative ideas for, like, you know, you could be giving someone a free plant. Like you could be, I'm going to give you a plant, like a physical little growing plant. And I say, well, I'm going to give you 10 plants, and now I want you to go and knock on 10 neighbors' doors and give each one of them the plant as a gift. This might be really scary, but the plant as a gift will be the thing that will make it less scary, because it's a gift. And maybe you'll sign up to do that. And if you have 10 plants, you're going to want to do it, because otherwise they'll die and you'll feel really bad. So you're not doing it so much for the gamification design and the environmental reason. You're doing it because I gave you the plants, and you don't want to look like a person who can't, you know, do anything. You don't want to feel like a loser, be like, oh my God, Katie gave me 10 plants and then I just let them all die and I promised and I didn't do it. It's actually really the interpersonal stickiness between us, which is why you're following through. And then, you know, you can reward people at the end. They have a goal when they do it. Maybe, you know, everybody, once they've contacted their 10 people, gets whatever. But we're kind of just applying these gamification principles to this outreach. And it is true that there is a resistance in people. It's scary to go out and talk to people to create these groups, but the amount of psychological traction you can get once a group does start going is enormously powerful. I joined a youth climate group, and I put my hand up to contact 3 organizations for like something they were doing. And like, I'm busy and stuff, and I was like, oh my God, they're gonna think like I'm just some total like loser if I don't do my job. And so I spent like 3 hours reaching out on LinkedIn and like sending all these messages to all these different groups.
Yeah, social accountability is huge. We will let ourselves down. Girls. We don't want to let others down. Right. Yeah, we don't want to let other people down. We'll let ourselves down all day long. But so I totally agree. I still, and we're getting to the end. Maybe we do another session to dive in. I still feel like there's a disconnect, and it's you, it's me, it's everybody in this field of us. Like, what you're saying is absolutely 100% correct, and I agree. And it would be great if more people did that. But for this thing to go viral, for the world to start doing it versus just, you know, 10 out of 1,000, it has to be something different. And what that is, how it's going to look, I'm not quite sure, but it has to be connecting. Just the way I look at it is connecting the dots between, okay, I'm here and I want to, and I know I should. And yeah, that's a good idea, to here, and you're actually doing it and you're taking the action, right? And even with what you were saying, you know, there's so much in there, and there's a lot of gray area and question marks of even somebody listening to this right now that might say, they might even like go, okay, I'm going to, and then they get down and they go, oh shoot, well, what about this piece? Like, how do I do this? And then they don't have you, or, you know, they're not, you know, they're not exactly sure how to, and then they go, it's too frustrating, I'm going to stop. And so to me, that's everything, is like, going from actually the concept to get, you know, and I see what you're saying with this social aspect, like getting them into, and maybe, you know, one of the things we've been looking at lately is like groups like in Reddit, where you already have these types of people that are passionate and into these things, right? So the friction's reduced. You're not going out and just cold calling, right? Or trying to start from, there's already these groups, and then you kind of go in and you can start engaging, because they already have the same interests and likes, and, you know, environmental groups and these types of things. For me, it's, you know, I joined a habits one, and people are talking about their habits. I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. They're already talking about the types of things I want. And then I can slowly start introducing, like, hey, have you tried this? And have you done this? And then the idea is the friction enough to where you get a committed group of people. It's like, okay, I'm willing to take action, right? And then they click to where you want them to go. But I still feel like we have to hand them the instruction manual. Like, we can't just say, if people would just start up a group and invite their friends and, you know, all hold each other accountable to make sure that they're tracking their trash, there's still just too much friction with that. Like, you would need to have a place on your website. Like, you would go into, let's just say you go into a Reddit group, you see people, you start talking about it, you see like 10 people that are like super passionate, like, yeah, I'm with you, like, let's do it, right? And then you go, okay, go to my website and click. Again, this isn't to make money. This is to give them the instructions on, like, here's your step-by-step thing to set up a little text string with your friends. Here's what you put in the text. You know, here's how you track it. You know, here's a link to an Excel sheet that's already pre-filled out for you that'll help you all track your trash, and you can share it with. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, and it's us doing. It's somebody else needs to do that for people, because unfortunately we're living in a world right now that discipline is becoming harder and harder to stick to. It's harder for us to take action, to follow through on things. People used to read books. People used, you know, it's not the way it used to be. And it's okay. And this is what we started this conversation out talking. This is the world we live in. And how do we use the technology and all these things that are before us that a lot of these companies are using against us, and it's taking away our attention and distracting us from what really matters. And we're going down the rabbit hole, and we're feeling bad about ourselves, and teen suicide is at an all-time high. And use it to actually start, you know, flipping the script on things that do matter and you care about and you'll feel good about. And to me, what that example I just gave is like, unless you connect the dots for somebody, like, I feel like right now you're asking, you might as well.
Yeah, but that's right. So it is asking somebody to move an elephant, but exactly what you said, like, you were just brainstorming on exactly how to do this, exactly what needs to be done. Have the scripts there, have it absolutely laid out, have it handheld. If somebody signs up, you don't just leave it to the internet. You know, you call them if you're like, it's your idea. You know, you call them like, hey, how are you? I heard you signed up for, you want to be like a leader of your like 7-person group. Awesome. Can I help you? What can I do? Can I call you back in a week and check on you? Yes. Hand holding, absolutely laid out, the spreadsheet, just as you said. And that might sound like it's like a simple thing for you, but me in this space, do you think that exists anywhere in all of the environmental NGOs and all of the city sustainability plans and all of the documentaries and all of the influencers? Have they done exactly what you just said? I've seen it once. And I don't think it was done that well. Like, it could have been done a lot better. Like, people will go out to philanthropic groups and raise millions of dollars for software and documentaries and advertising campaigns.
Right.
Will they just develop the hand-holding template of how to get these groups of people in a group to get them to start taking action? No, because it's just not in the consciousness. We're not like thinking of this. But you could. I mean, if you've got $1 million for a documentary, maybe you could spend $100,000 on a documentary, and then the $900,000 on the support team to start getting these little groups of actions going. You know, a few people that are paid to help do it. It's just nobody's thinking. We're just not thinking. That's
what I'm talking about. Like, we're thinking in the wrong way. I love this. This is okay. I was like, kind of like, I don't want to end this podcast without like having some sort of like coming up. Like, this is what I'm talking about, right? Is this awareness aspect is, and even in my own system, I say, and you mentioned the importance of awareness earlier, like tracking if you were to do the trash, like how much you're actually, and I do that in the 5 main areas of my life. I have a system that I help people with. That's huge. And that's super important. But awareness does not translate to actually doing. And so I love the analogy you just gave, whether it's like they're spending millions and millions on documentaries and awareness of how sad and how bad things are. But like, if they would just spend a fraction on stuff like you just said, I mean, that boggles my mind that there's not something like what I just said. I mean, like, here, you and I are spitballing. And to me, that's just such an easy thing to set up. Like, hey, here's a website that tells you exactly how to start a thing with 10 friends. And, you know, this is how to grow it and become viral, almost like a pyramid scheme, but like a good one, you know, like just the research going into that, the behavioral science and the gamification aspect of it versus just the awareness. I mean, my God.
Yeah, like honestly, there's this big campaign. There's this building, what's it called? Decarbonization Building Coalition in California. Apparently they just got recently $6 million worth of funding to help drive with this big push for electrification, which is getting rid of natural gas and getting, everybody's houses fully electric. And so they spent a lot of this money on an advertising, like a traditional advertising campaign. So they got an advertising agency to make these nice little, okay, moderately all right videos saying, let's get off gas, let's go electric is great, whatever. And that's okay if they want to spend the money on traditional advertising, but there's no plan to do what we've just talked about, this person to person going out, even if you just paid people, individually, say, we'll give you $100 if you go out and talk to your neighbors, and something like that, like this like deep social network driven conversation. I'm starting to use this word conversation design, of getting people out there and talking. And we were talking about this like in the way of how to make gamification work better, is that we need these social diffusion conversation mechanisms designed, as well as the gamifying the conversations. Like if we're just treating people like individuals, it's not really going to work. But yeah, my whole industry, we don't do it. It's really sad, and it's all, everything I'm doing is moving in this direction of trying to design for people to go and talk to other people.
Yeah. Well, thank God there are people like you, and keep doing what you're doing. Let's keep in touch, because we are of the same mind, different bodies, but the same mind, and how we're, I think, looking at all this, and we have the same passion and frustration, which is, our passion is like, come on people, let's go. And our frustration is, how do I make people want to do it and actually do it, versus saying, oh yeah, I should do that. Because how many people, what you're doing is it's a noble cause, right? And so I'm sure there's not one person you talk to, unless, they happen to, there are some, well, we won't go into politics, but don't agree with climate change, we'll say. But anybody that understands it and knows that the science is real is going to go, bravo, what you're doing. This is so great. But then how many of those people are actually doing what you're,
well, we're very prone to staying in our own bubbles and just hanging out with people who are just like us. Like the hard thing is going out and talking to people who aren't like you, and that they'll tell you, I don't believe in climate change. I think we should eat meat and kill animals all the time, 3 meals a day. I think I should cut down as many trees as I want. And these conversations will feel frustrated, and you'll feel like, oh my God, people don't care. But it's like breaking the ice. It's like massaging like a muscle. It's not going to happen straight away if there's somebody who has a different belief system to you. But just by having the conversation, it actually starts to break the ice. And it might take that person having 10 or 20 conversations, and then eventually they'll be like, you know what? Maybe I've actually been wrong about all of this. And that's just part of the work. That's how we create social diffusion. And an app is not going to do that for you, or a game. That's something we have to do human to human.
That's it. Social diffusion by becoming the social norm. Like what you just said that's the answer. And now it's up to people like you and me to get the planet there. The answer is, it needs to become the norm to do these things we're talking about. Not oh, that's a good idea, I should do that. Right? It needs to be the norm that you track your garbage, and that you are taking note and having goals on how much garbage you're putting out. And just for that one example you gave, and obviously there's a lot of different elements within climate change that you can do, but like to have it, and then to make it fun and be a game, but yeah, we got to bridge that. It's bridging that gap and giving people, handing it to them in a way that's just so simple and frictionless that they almost can't do it, right? That it's almost inevitable that they're going to do it. That's the rub. And that's
and the social part of it. The thing is that if you set up like a zero waste party, you're like dads for like no trash dads group, just for your community, not a big global thing where you're trying to get 1 million followers, but just like in your neighborhood, right? They will want to come and join for the social aspect. They will come and join because people want to go to the potluck. They want to go to the party. We want better social relationships. So they will adopt the behaviors, not because they care about the planet so much, because we all kind of care, right? They'll adopt it because of the social mechanism. So the social glue is the thing that makes it happen, not the environmental education.
Yeah.
It's a totally different paradigm shift to make in terms of designing this stuff. And maybe not even the gamification that much. It'll just be because like They'll be like, oh, Will holds a barbecue like every Sunday, and we get to go. And then, we do this like waste thing at the same time, but they're primarily going for the social aspect, and that's the glue that makes it all work.
I love it. This was so great. I'm in with all of it. So let's keep our social connection going. You're over all the way across the world. You're
in California.
Where are you? Oh, why did I think that you were? So obviously you're not.
I'm Australian.
You're from where? Australia, New Zealand?
California.
So I thought you were still there for some reason. Oh,
yeah,
so
all
you
the way
live in
across the
California.
world in California.
All right. Well, you picked a good spot to do what you're doing. I mean, that's right. That's the center of. There's a lot of people that are into and agree with what you're doing, and it's also one of the worst emissions places right. So, Godspeed. Let's keep in touch. I'm sure you're doing a lot, and I'm in Chicago. So if you're ever in Chicago, hit me up. We'll go grab coffee. We'll chat more. We'll keep in touch. And I have family in LA.
In Mountain
View. Where in
Silicon
California?
Valley. Do you know what that is? It's a bit south of, about 45 minutes south of San Francisco.
Yes. Very cool. Okay. Well, thank you for being on. I really appreciate it. Any parting words that you want to say?
Life gamification system that I prepared. I got it out.
Oh God. Funny you said it. Just as I'm like about to sign off, I'm a little rusty. I haven't done one of these in about a month. I took a hiatus. I do always at least ask that,
I was so
if not the
excited
very last
to
question.
show it off.
Please. So what is this habit?
So this is just okay. So I
gamification
wanted to show this to people to explain how simple. Like you do not need an app and $1 million and to be a computer programmer. You can. Okay, so I suffer from 4 terrible habits in my personal life that I find like life and death hard to get to do, which is to do yoga every day, to check my emails, to be on top of all of my finances, and to keep the house clean. I'm probably not the only one that finds hard to get on top of these every single day. And I'm terribly prone to avoiding them for like 3 months at a time. Like I'll let emails go. Like it's a terrible habit. So what I did was I got this calendar, right? And then I got these stickers, and I'm like, I'm going to get on top of these terrible habits. So I got these stickers from Amazon. See, they come in all the different colors, and each one represents, and I have to do them in order from hardest to least hard. And then depending on how I go, I get a red dot if I do none. I get an orange dot if I do yoga. I get a yellow dot if I also get my email, my inbox to 0. It has to be to 0, otherwise I don't get the dot.
Good for you.
And then a green dot if if I get every single financial job is done, and then a blue one if I also get the house clean. So this was a good month. I was really on my game plan with this one. And then every day, and then you can see this is more of a mixed month. Depending on how I get, and they have to be in that order. And so basically I did this every month. See, this was a bit of a not as good a month. I
love it. I love that. That's basically what you're showing. This is my app, but my app's different. But it's the same type of thing. It's essentially a way to put in your face every day the habits that you're trying to do, and a system to sort of make it fun that resonates with you, to track it. And then you can look at that, and you can kind of look back at your months, and you can be like, all right, well, what am I not doing? Like, what's the habit I'm really struggling with? I've gotten better at the finance one, but I'm really still letting my emails go, right? And it goes back to that very first thing we were talking about, which is the awareness, which is a huge piece of that. And if you're just trying to like rely on willpower to be like, I should be better with my finances, I should check my emails more, like we all know that's not going to work. You need a system like this. And what you're doing is a perfect example, thank you for sharing that, of gamifying it in your own way. And my goal in life is to like figure out a way that like a universal type system like that people can use, that is like really hits all those buttons of our core drives and makes us want to do it and take the actions, right? And that's what I'm trying to do. I love that. Is that something that you're planning on developing into
No,
anything,
it's just my own system. And it's really not, the aim is not to get the blue spot every single day, because that's kind of unrealistic. The aim is just to provide a sense of data disclosure. Because if I've like done that, sometimes I've gotten red for like 12 days in a row. That means like, oh my God, that means I have not done yoga for 12 days. And if I'm not tracking it, I can, you live in a fantasy world that you're doing better than you really are. So it's really just a tracking system. So I can sort of watch and be like, I haven't had a blue spot for a couple of weeks. I better really like spend a day just being on top of everything. So if you see it just as data disclosure, it's quite an easy thing. There's no pressure on me to achieve anything. It's just simple sort of data. No, it'll never be developed into anything. It's just my own little process.
I love it though. Thank you for sharing. And you know, that's a very simple, easy, obvious, like fun, like that's it. Behavioral science and gamification all rolled into one solution that you've come up with. And I assume that it's, well, I shouldn't assume. How is it working?
I got really on top of it for a while. The last couple of months, I haven't been using it because I just sort of took the pressure off myself to be a high performing person, and just chose to be lazy for a little while. But yeah, like I had a whole month last year in August where I had like almost all blue spots for the entire month. And then I got to, which was really hard.
Right. And to me,
like it took me a lot to get there. But once I got it, it's like one of those things that once you keep it going, it's pretty easy to maintain. But once you fall off the wagon and let like all the invoices pile up and the house get messy, then it's just like, it takes like a week to get on top of again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was amazing. It totally gave me this peace of mind and space for me to have like a really peaceful month where I could just do meditation and relaxation, which is what I wanted, without all these little bees in the head being like, you haven't done this thing, the car's dirty, you know, all those little messy thoughts.
Yeah. We have I call them messes.
Yeah,
we
like
messes
I was able to
they
have those messes under control enough that I could do some really deep meditation and deep creative work that I wanted to do without my own thoughts distracting me.
Good for you.
But yeah, I'm going to get back on it. It's
so,
about
but,
I'm
so
going to get back on the wagon again now and get back on my A game.
And so let me just real quick. I mean, we got to go because I may divide this. This is one of my longest interviews, but there's a reason. It's been great into two parts. But so just real quick with that, because so you stopped doing it, right? And then was there a reason where, like, I from what I gathered, let me tell me if this is correct. I kind of got the sense that like it was a lot of work and effort to get all those blue dots, and it felt great. But then you kind of got to a point where you're like this is too much. Like I can't keep this up, and so I'm just going to take an emotional break and let myself just sort of be without feeling like I have to be the superhuman for a while. Is that what happened? Is that why you stopped doing it, or is there another reason? I wouldn't say that it was too overwhelming or it was too hard. I started to get a little bit concerned that my system, which was also, having an alarm that went off at 6:10 and then another alarm that went off at 6:30, because 20 minutes is just enough time for me to brush my teeth, wash my hair, make a cup of coffee and roll the yoga mat out. And if the other alarm goes off at 6:30, I have to be on the yoga mat at 6:30. And then I've got my yoga done by 7, which is when my daughter wakes up, and then I have enough time to get her to school. And if I get all that in the morning, by the time she's dropped off at school, which is about 8:15 or 8:30, I'm like exercised, hair's brushed, I'm basically like ready to go. Rather than, you drop the kid off from school and you like haven't washed your face, and you know what that's like. Sometimes kids, I don't know if kids are in school and you're just like this grumpy, like just woken up mess, and it's like and then you have to start at 8:30 and then you're like, okay. But anyway, so I was sort of doing this structured thing, and then I'm like, okay, then the emails, and and it did work. I got on really in control and on top of all that stuff. But then I started to worry a little bit that I was like, am I like missing some sort of intuitive like message from the universe, sort of, by being so structured? Like, what if I just like sleep in and just like remember my dreams and then like diary and journal and just sort of like chill out a bit? So no, it was a bit more just like I wanted to just take a break from the rigid personality style so I could just listen a little bit more closely to my body and the universe and intuitive musings. But I think now it's time to go back to it because I'm feeling a little bit disorganized again, and I might, maybe it's like a sort of a piece of clothing that you like put on or take off at different times. Yeah, I'm very interested in this. Let's keep in touch about this, because this kind of, part of what you're saying is destroying my thesis, which is that once a habit's formed, your neurons are firing together and it kind of becomes automatic. And I know that there are certain habits that are like that, but what I'm hearing from you is, we're starting to form and it was becoming automatic, but there was also some other parts that you were like, maybe there's a downside to this. And then you took a break from it and then you got out of the habit of doing it. That's interesting. Although I've got to say, like, it never formed into an easy habit. Thank you for sharing. None of this stuff, no matter how much I do it, yoga at 6:30 a.m., checking my emails every day, doing all the banking. Like, it never, no matter how much I do it, it never feels effortless. It never was easy. It's always easy. Like, every time. Well, and that's the other part of the gamification aspect of coming up with additional ways to reduce the friction to make those things easy, right? So instead of just saying, I've got to do my finances, like what I would do is part of it would be, okay, how can I make doing my finances more obvious, more easy, more rewarding, more satisfying, right? More fun. And so, you know, like an example with me is like for exercise, I knew I needed to work out more. I'm getting older and I'm like, wait, what's happening? There's a little pooch down there. That's never been there before. And I'd always exercise the same amount, but I'm getting older and I need to step up my exercising a little. And it took me a little while to figure out what it was, but I naturally like sports. It's in my DNA. I'm super competitive. I can play a lot of different sports for hours and be drenched in sweat, get the best workout, and not even feel like I worked out because I'm having so much fun, right? And the social aspect of it. So I'm like, sports, it has to be sport related. I'm not just going to go to the gym and sit on a treadmill. And then I figured out I call it my golden habit, was basketball, because I'm like, okay, basketball is actually my favorite. And there's a league that's 8:30 at night after my kids go to bed twice a week, which is the perfect time for me. It fits my schedule. And it's the perfect thing that I want to do. I get a really good workout. I can play for 2 hours and I didn't feel like I worked out, right? And then I still, though, was struggling with it for some reason. Like I sat down one time, I put my kids down to bed at 7:30 and I had this hour in between. And I realized there was a problem there because I had an hour lag between when I put them to bed and when I left. And because I'm like so exhausted from just being a human being and a dad and running a business and all these things, I would sit down on the couch and turn the TV on, and then it was over. It was over. Like there was no way I was getting off that couch, right? And so I'm like, okay, I need to gamify this even further. I need to trick my brain. So what I did is, number one, first thing I did is I put my gym clothes on when my kids were in the bath, so I was already in them, right? This is like an Atomic Habits thing, trick I got from him, and that actually did help. Like I had my gym clothes on, and 8:30 came, and I'm like, okay, like I'm already in them. I might as well go. But then the next week, same thing happened. I was in my gym clothes and I still stayed on the couch. So I took the next step of like, how can I even make it more obvious, more easy, more rewarding, satisfying? And my ultimate way that I solved it, after just not giving up and continuing to just tweak the system and press the buttons, was I had sat down where I am right now at my computer desk. Once I put my kids down, I came here and I started working and finishing whatever project I was working on. And by doing that, by finishing that project, I became so engaged because I enjoy what I do that the hour just flew by and I'm still alert and mentally active. And it was very easy when my alarm went off to go to the gym to just get up and get in the car. I'm already in my gym clothes. I'm active. I'm not sitting. So that's just an example.
You became
of like
active. So if you became in a relaxed state, you could not get out of it. But if you maintained an active state, it was very easy to switch.
That's right. And I had to figure that out, right? And I had to keep tweaking and seeing what it was, right? And little things along the way were helping, but I still missed one. And then now it's formed. Like it's in my schedule. I do it every Tuesday, Thursday, to reduce the friction. So I'm not in that like passive state. I sit down at my desk. I'm already in my gym clothes. My alarm goes and it's done. I don't even have to think about it, right? And so that's just an example that, of not just like trying to say, I need to do my finances or I need to work out more, right? It's again, like we were talking about earlier, connecting the dots between I need to and I want to and I have to, because I have to. Like, this is just part of who I am and what I'm doing. This is like, I've made this my routine. So anyways,
you're the one who,
I feel like we've gone on forever.
But yeah, I mean, I was listening to a podcast with a neuroscience guy, sort of similar question. And he said, you've really got to get yourself to fall in love with the person that is the person who does the more positive habit. Like you've got to really make that long-term, really identify with the person who does the positive habit in the long term. That's who I want to be. That's my goal. And that mental connection with that person that you want to be is that's more motivating. You've got to train yourself to really connect with that, and that person that you don't want to be doing the bad habit is the person that you don't want to be, and that you can sort of hack your consciousness to divert. I mean, if you're unable to find any like smaller behavioral things like you did, I don't know if I'll be able to find them for me, but it's like really narrowing in on like, I like organized Katie. Organized Katie is clear. in control of her life, clear mind, smart, competent person. Disorganized Katie is somebody I don't like. Like, I don't want to be that person. So I have to have these little suffering points all the time to not turn into this person that I don't like.
Totally. Right. And when you said, I'm not sure if I'll be able to find those things, right? Like, if I just said, go find those things, you won't find them. But like with the system that I'm building, and I'm actually using some AI is interesting and how it's all coming into play. I won't go down that rabbit hole right now, but there's actually a way to plug in some information of who you are, your personality, your DNA, your strengths, your likes, your dislikes, your schedule, and have this, I'm going to call it, it's going to be like a habits AI type thing, spit out that goal, to help get you closer to forming that golden habit by giving you suggestions, just like I gave, on things that worked for me. Because it starts to get to know you, and it starts to say, okay, well, we know that this is something that you like and is motivating, and this is what your schedule is. So you're trying to develop this habit. Let's try it this way. And it gives you suggestions, and you kind of just keep tweaking. And then, but again, that's only still the first step of becoming aware of, like, I call it your golden habit. Like, this is the ideal habit for me to try to form, my goal is this. This is my ideal habit to accomplish that goal that's customized to me, but now I still have to do it. Right. So even though the friction's reduced, and it's like, this is like my basketball at the Y was what I was saying is the best way for me to get, I still have to do it. And so then you still got to tweak with the system and to get there. I can talk about this for 20,000 hours. This is fascinating stuff. Well, thank you so much for being on, Katie. This is awesome. And let's keep in touch, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help you with your goal. I have mad respect for what you're doing and how you're doing it. And,
Yeah, thanks.
Keep it going.
There's a book too. So I wrote a book on this. I don't know if you saw. So there's a whole book on environmental gamification.
Yes.
If anybody wants to check it out.
Save the World.
Yeah.
by
a podcast and a
Katie
book
Patrick,
on all
Amazon.
of this stuff.
Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, we'll put all that stuff in the show notes and everything as well. But thank you. Yes. And again, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks so much for the
let's do it
opportunity
again.
to chat about this stuff, Will. Cheers. Bye.
I loved it. Cheers.
That's it for the Gamify Your Habits podcast with Will Moore. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to visit moremomentum.com to learn how you can gamify your life.